Welcome to the new Rainmaker Podcast, a weekly show for visionary founders and team members alike to come together and share the heartfelt, the cringe, and the radically honest truths about what it's really like to build and work for some of the world's most exposed brands on the biggest internet stages. I'm your host, Veronica Romney, and after working for some of the biggest names in the online space myself, I've learned that it takes both leadership and dream team collaboration to truly scale a company to its greatest potential. You can build a business alone, but you cannot scale it on your own. And my goal on today's episode and every episode is to inspire our dreamers and empower our leaders. Make sure to follow and share my podcast with your friends and colleagues, and feel free to tag me on Instagram at vromney with your insights and ahas. Now let's make it rain on today's episode. The whole thing. Hey, Stephanie, welcome to the Rainmaker Podcast.
Hey, oh my gosh, I'm so glad to be here.
Okay, you guys, I'm going to have Stephanie introduce herself, but let me just tee this up because I'm really excited to have you. Stephanie is a category king, actually more like a queen. She's a queen when it comes to agency work, agency life, running an agency super successfully. But what she's also done, she's cracked the code, the secret magic of retaining great people in her agency, which most agencies really struggle to do that. So we're going to have a really thorough, deep conversation about how she has just really stepped up as a leader and built an agency with really great retention on the inside, and that's reflective in her client services. So before all that, Stephanie, would you mind giving an introduction to the Rainmaker community?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I am Stephanie Dove Blake, and I run an incredible agency called Social Sparrow. We actually serve chiropractors all over the United States, and we help them generate leads and grow their practices to $1 million practices. And so it has just been the most incredible journey. We started about 7 years ago, and I started as a stay-at-home homeschooling mama of four. And I just knew that while I could go to corporate, that wasn't where I wanted to go. I needed to be there for my kids. Some of them have learning differences, and I wanted to homeschool. And so, yeah, I started my agency and I began to grow, but I was hyper aware of my strengths and my weaknesses. So I started building a team and really leaning into finding people who could do all the things that I could not. And it's just been the most incredible journey. I mean, over the past 7 years, it's opened up doors I never thought possible. Some very shiny object doors that I had to bring myself back around to what I was doing. But it has been just an absolutely incredible journey. And I've gotten to do business coaching and build courses and do all sorts of incredible things. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's me in a nutshell.
Well, yes, all the things. First of all, I know Stephanie Dove Blake. She's a phenomenal human being. People that don't know you don't understand just how good of a human being that you are and how generous and kind and charitable that you are. And I think obviously that's reflective in the fact that you have built a company with the kind of leadership that we all aspire to become. So I'm really excited to have you teach us your ways. Now, agency life is brutal. We can both agree, right? The churn and burn, not just of clients, but the churn and burn of people, of staff. And I know from working at agencies and then having my own agency before I sold it, that when you lose one of those frontline, whether it be a client success manager, an account manager, doesn't matter the title. When you lose the front line, the person that has the relationship and the relationship equity with the client, and they leave the company and you have to transfer the client to someone else, that's where we would always see a huge spike in maybe we'll pause services or maybe we'll and so you risk the relationship as well if you're not on long-term contracts, right? So
Yeah.
agency life is hard, not just on the client and the fulfillment and done for you service providers. I like my empathy for you, but on the team side. And I get on many power hour calls with clients, and this is what I hear all the time. What has been your experience with your staff running an agency, having rapport with clients? What was the norm for you? And you should brag, talk about your actual employee retention rates, please.
Okay, it's funny because it's actually, this sounds so crazy, but it's almost honestly something I don't even know what the rates are because it's not really a thing in our agency. I have, at the very beginning, I did lose one employee, but she returned to her previous employer who had a previous relationship with her, and they offered her the moon and the sun, which at that point I couldn't do. It was a better move for her. But since then, I think we haven't really lost anybody that was client facing except for one recently, and it was kind of a mutual decision. And so it's not really been a thing. And so I've had
Uh-huh.
almost everybody who's been with me for years and years. And I'm so proud of that because I don't know what I'd do without them.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think that I literally don't know what I would do without them. They're just incredible. I know their value. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And so I think
Yeah.
maybe if there's anything that I could say, it's probably that, because I know, like I said, at the beginning of my journey, I was hyper aware of my strengths and my weaknesses. Yes, I could do it all,
Mm-hmm.
but I could only do it all for a very short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that about
Mm-hmm.
myself. So I had to find the rock stars to come alongside and to be able to equip them.
Okay, so we're gonna break it down. So one thing is pouring into a team member's, flower bed and letting them grow and they staying with you for years and years because you're pouring into their human capital and they're just growing as a human being with your stewardship, right? The other thing is finding somebody that is worthy and that is exciting to pour into. So, like the first
Mm,
question I have for you, which I think is really fascinating, because you talked about being a working mom yourself, but where do most of your staff come from? Like, where do you source, find,
mm.
recruit from?
Okay, so that is a phenomenal question. So it was always in my heart whenever I started Social Sparrow to actually hire moms who were like me, because I know what it's like to know that you're capable to help people and to do things in someone else's business. And just know that your heart was at home, it was with your kids. And not being able to have the capability of bringing in extra money for your family because you have that priority to be at home with your children. And so whenever I started working with Social Sparrow, or started building Social Sparrow, that was one of my main goals, was to hire work from home moms, or moms who wanted that opportunity to be able to work from home and bring some money in for their family. And that's what we're living. So I think that's one of the most moving parts about this journey, that I didn't actually recognize the impact, because to have been able to see the growth and get to be a part of the doors that were open for the people who work in my company is just the biggest gift that I didn't recognize. And so, but I mean, every single one of the beautiful, beautiful people that I have that work on my team are all moms that, they have a priority of working from
Mm-hmm.
home. And it's just been incredible. Most of them
Mm-hmm.
have never had any prior experience. And that was an intentional choice on my part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to keep going here because I'm getting real excited. Okay, number one, you hire a whole bunch of moms who are mostly stay at home moms or work at home moms, right? Which is phenomenal. I have to tell you, that's not always the preference of some employers, which makes my heart even hurt to say that out loud because I get those conversations like, well, what if there's a kid on the call? Or what if
Mm,
the kid interrupts a call? Especially when they're client facing individuals, like they're the ones communicating, interacting with the clients. And so when you're picking a working mom who might have interruptions being at home with her kids, like what expectation did you set with your team, right? Like how did
yeah.
you communicate that in a way that that would be appropriate?
Yeah, so I don't know how appropriate it is, but I know that I just shared my heart with them, and I knew I was looking and reflecting back on who I was at that time whenever I was homeschooling my kids, and it was basically like, if we're on team meetings, I want to see your babies. Like, bring your babies on camera. Like, I don't care if they're crying. Like, it's no big deal. If you're client facing, I want you to do your very, very best for your child to not interrupt the phone calls, right? Like, if you can put them down for nap and schedule calls during nap time, things are going to happen sometimes. And I try to make it to where my clients understand that who I hire and why I hire them. And so if they hear a kid in the background, hopefully it's not going to be that big of a deal, right? But there has been only one instance really where that was a problem. And other than that, whenever I think about myself back then, I would have highly prioritized making sure that I could honor that, right? When I'm working, I would make sure that, it didn't interrupt my work, that could be professional and show up looking professional, especially whenever you're client facing. And I knew that about myself then. So I'm like, all I need to do is just find those that can hold that true to themselves as well, to honor Social Sparrow while honoring their role as a mother. And so, so far, we've done an excellent job of that. Like I said, there's only kind of one time we had an issue with that,
Mm-hmm.
and it really wasn't even a major player at all. It really wasn't a major issue at all. It was just one client mentioned it, and this person just
Mm-hmm.
happened to be going through some serious life stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
anyway, The client mentioned it, we talked about it, and that was that, you know? And so it's, I think whenever you're looking for the right people and you can see that in them, that they know how to be professional and honor what you ask of them, you know, then it can be a beautiful match made in heaven.
Yeah. I want to applaud you because I feel like it's more of a norm now, especially after the pandemic when everybody was stuck at home with their kids doing all the things. But you were hiring working moms before even we got shut down and before it was as normal and as funny and viral as you see people of the kids walking into the, the broadcast or behind the scenes, right?
Right.
Because that's just, I don't know, I feel my heart, I have a soft spot in my heart for working moms that feel like they have to hide in plain sight
Yeah.
because by choosing motherhood they have to take a back seat in their
Mm,
careers because there's
mm.
certain positions that are outside of their grasp now that they have the demands of home. And so I love that not only do you set an example as a right, you homeschool and being a homeschooling mom and things like that in your journey as well, not only do you model it and exemplify it to your team, but then you also don't reprimand your staff for having a life that is not just exclusively the business that I think some people do.
Yeah. And you know, I want to acknowledge too, as a business owner, that there are and can be frustrating things. But for instance, like,
Mhm.
we have a schedule that has a lot of flexibility for our employees. And usually around 3 o'clock, there are no meetings that are going to happen because everybody's picking up their kids or whatever is happening, you know, if they have littles or whatever. And
Mhm.
so there are things that you do sacrifice for it, but like, it is the best sacrifice. You know, it's
Mhm.
totally worth it. And I think that I benefit for that because of, for one, again, putting myself in my own place whenever where I was, and how badly I wanted that opportunity to be able to make some extra money and help my husband. My husband was working two jobs, right? And I wanted to be able to help and bring in some money. And whenever I did have that opportunity, because I worked for someone just briefly before I started my agency, and it was so game changing, and I was so just like grateful for that opportunity, right? And so I bent over backwards to make sure that everything I did was the best it could possibly be. You know what I mean? That I served well, that I didn't drop any balls, you know, because it meant that much to me. And it's awesome to see that in some of my employees where they're so grateful, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm grateful for you. So we're just like, it's just like this pool of gratefulness, because yeah, sometimes it gets hard. And so for those of you who are listening as a CEO and you're like, I could never do that, or I don't even know, you know, oh, she makes it sound so easy or whatever. No, there are times where I can get a little frustrated over different things, but I always recenter and remind myself why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I remember where I was, and I'm remembering that I'm not just here to make an impact in my bank account. I'm not just here to make an impact in my clients' lives, but I'm here to make an impact in the lives of my employees. And this is part of that you do. This is the sacrifice you have by being able to hire these incredible people and give them this opportunity. And they're incredible, right? It's not like this some like sob story. These are powerful, incredible women who are capable, right? Like, they are a gift to me. I am like a gift to my clients, right? And so it's an honor for myself to get to work with them, as well as, you know, us to get to work together. So it goes both ways.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, no, true leadership goes beyond the bank account, right? True leadership isn't just having influence and impact on the revenue that's in your bank, but having it on the people that you feel
Yeah.
called to serve and your clients, but also the people that you have been provided to care for as far as your team, right? That's true
Mhm.
leadership. And I know that you take that mantle extremely seriously. Okay, so let's talk about how you make these rock stars. Number one, this is like more technical questions, I guess, or tactical questions, but people want to know, right? So, one, where do you find these awesome army of working women? And then, two, like you said, most of them don't come with any kind of agency marketing, digital marketing services experience. So, then how do you take them from zero to hero? Like, how do you get them from where you pick them up to where they can thrive with you for years and years?
That's a great question. Okay, so for the first question, where do we find them? Typically, we do a normal hiring process, but I definitely really lean into who my employees know. Like, do you know somebody who'd be a great fit for this? Let us know. Matter of fact, my integrator and I were just talking this morning, and we have a referral. Like, one of our employees is like, "Oh, this so and so, I know her. She's going to apply for this position you have open right now. And both of us were like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. Like, I'm super excited about that, because usually like draws to like, right? So great people usually surround themselves with great people. And usually a great person doesn't want to invite someone onto a team that isn't going to be a great fit. So I lean into that a lot. Like, who do you know? Is there anybody in mind? And we also do usually always open the hiring process wide open to, all the Facebook groups, Indeed, and all the places that we list for. And so we find them from everywhere. We've had we have one wonderful new team member. She applied and she actually lives in Mexico, and she is the most amazing person. I just have loved having her on the team. She's just incredible. Then we also have a friend who just came on of one of our CSMs, and she's from New York, and she's just phenomenal. I mean, just the most wonderful thing. So you got the both spectrums from anywhere. And then so once we bring them in, I will say, I feel like as an agency, we can do better at this. I know it's worked for us so far, but this is definitely one of the areas I want to grow in, and I want to do better for our agency. But whenever we first began, the way I trained people was I had them watch me do whatever I was doing. And then I always recorded anything I was doing and talked out loud, which was difficult because a lot of times the things that we do, we think are super easy, right? So, but if you can train yourself to speak out loud and what you're thinking as you're doing it with all the little details and record yourself, then you're creating those training materials for future employees to come in. And so what I would do is I would first bring them on, welcome them in, get to know them. We are huge on personality tests. So that's another thing we can talk about in a minute. But I would bring them in, and then I would show them exactly what I did. And then I'd also have those resources where I recorded myself doing those tasks. And then I would have them actually do a task whenever I'm right there with them, guiding them through. They're the hands, but I'm telling them what they need to do. And then we would do the same task. But at that point, they would actually be the one who was guiding and doing the thing. And I would only say something if I felt like something was wrong. And then they would go and they would do it all by themselves. And then I would go back and check the work. And so that was kind of like the 5-point process that we would utilize whenever I was first beginning. And so now, we have kind of a hodgepodge of that on top of training videos, but it's so difficult in an agency to keep training videos up to date. I think that's been our biggest problem is we create a training video 6 months later, we're doing it differently, or our processes have changed. So right now I will openly admit it's a little bit trial by fire. Like they come in, but we tell them. You know what I mean? Like I will not hire anybody without having that conversation with them in the interview and just say, hey, listen, when you come on, it is going to be all hands on deck, and there's going to be so much. You're going to learn a new language when you come to work with us. And it's not going to be easy, and you're going to feel a little bit like you're drowning. But I promise you, we are here to support you. You have a team that knows exactly what you've been through, and we're there with you all along the way. So again, I don't feel like we have our onboarding processes like nailed down, but what we do have nailed down is supporting each other through it and making sure that we feel seen and heard in the process of learning and growing.
Okay, so two things that come to my brain that I'm just like super excited for. You're right, by the way. It's like this joke in digital marketing. By the time there's a digital marketing book printed, it's already like outdated. It's been outdated.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really difficult by the nature of what we do. Yeah, so much so that I remember even in my agency that we like, not that we foregoed SOPs because there was some basic stuff, like especially like the company language or the company onboarding and things like that. But when it came to the marketing knowledge or the marketing doing, because the platforms would change, Google would change, Facebook would change, we just basically had like training sessions every Friday, as
Yeah.
opposed to like recorded videos, because it just, by the nature of these things changing, it was so tough to
Yeah.
stay with it. And then it would get deflating, right? But okay, let's go to what you said about setting expectations before they start. The reason I want to bring this up is because it's like, it frustrates me. I oftentimes see, I can tell by the way that the job description is written. I can tell when it's like a 2 or 3 page job description of all the things that this person will be doing. But then at the very top, it says, we are super flexible and this should be like a 20-hour-a-week job. I'm like, bull crap. Absolute garbage. Like, there's no way. Like, you're defying the laws of physics. Like, what are you talking about? So I often find I'm not saying that CEOs are disingenuous, because I understand that the workforce right now is in the favor of the employee and not the employer. Like for every 2 job posts, there's 1 job seeker. So like it is the seeker's arena to be picky. And so like you want to put your best foot forward to attract the right talent. I understand that. However, sometimes I feel like there's a lot of CEOs or a lot of companies who underplay how demanding the role will be, or how steep the learning curve will be, or how much XYZ factors will add to their initial onboarding stress or pressure tolerance capacity, right? So, what I loved about what you said was, I don't sugarcoat and I tell them, you're going to learn a new language. And if
Mhm.
anybody has ever actually learned a second or third language, it's tough, right? There's moments where you're like, I don't know how to do this, or I can't roll my R's or whatever, right? So, like, I love that you at least manage some emotional expectations beyond even the tactical bullet points that you might list on a job description. Yes.
Yeah, I feel like it's so important because most of my beautiful team is, they are managing. Like I have one of our CSMs came back from maternity leave and she's got a new baby. It's her first one, and she had already come in and we moved her into a full time capacity. And there's just so much. There's so much, and so
Mm,
she got more clients, and then she went away and had a baby and came back and took on her full roster with this new baby and this new life, right? And it's just we were very straightforward, like even though you may not actually understand this, you may understand it in like your mind, but like until you experience it in your heart, when you come
mhm,
back with a baby, it is just completely different. Be ready. Be
mhm,
Understand that it's going to be not like it was before, and please don't try
mhm,
to be who you were then. You need to discover who you are now with having a baby and working from home, because the expectations are just, they have to be different for yourself. You are new. You have this new baby. Like it's different. And
mhm,
so it's the same thing whenever someone comes on with Social Sparrow. Sometimes they're homeschooling. Sometimes they have a toddler that maybe is like crazy wild. You know what I mean? And when you're coming in and you're dealing with that on top of the fact that it's a brand new industry, it's a lot. It's a lot. And we know that. But we only hire these rock stars. Like I can see it in them when we
sure.
have interviews with them. I know they're capable. You know what I mean? It's just
Mhm,
sometimes you don't know until you know, and then they're in, and it's like, okay, but the growth, oh my gosh. Particularly, I'm thinking about one person on my team, who, someone would say maybe she had a disadvantaged background, but I've known and I've seen it in her for so long, just this warrior spirit, nothing is going to take this woman out, right? Nothing.
mhm,
And
mhm,
the growth I have seen in this woman over the past years has just been phenomenal. And she is embodying this professional, right? Where she's like
mm,
owning her space and owning, these things like funnels and all these different things. And it is so incredible to see that growth and to see them embodying this professional, powerful woman, you know?
yeah.
Whereas before they may have come in feeling very sheepish and incapable and
Mhm,
not qualified, and
mhm,
then they get it. And all of a sudden, it's so funny. The other day, you have these surreal moments every once in a while, or I do. I don't, maybe nobody else does, but sitting in a team meeting and I'm not leading it, my one of my team members is leading the meeting and everybody's just talking and there's a client problem. And for just a minute, I can step outside of my own self and out of my own brain and I can just hear them talking. I'm like, man, if anybody was listening right now, they would have no idea what we were talking about. Like they would not even be able to follow because it is this our own little social sparrow world of language and how we work and what we do. And it's incredible to watch. It's powerful. You know what I mean?
Hey, it's V, and we'll get back into today's interview. But first, I want to invite you to a very special Rainmaker open house, a live call with me on November 23rd at 1 p.m. Eastern. This is not a webinar. Repeat, I am not going to pitch slap you in any way. In fact, this is a quick, concise, and thorough overview of how the Rainmaker residency works, and especially for those who are accepted into it. Come see what all the hype is about and why one CEO recorded a 7-minute loom to gush over the last one I gave. True story. Head to veronicaromney.com or click the link in my show notes, or you can always go to bit.ly/RR open house to register for the Rainmaker open house on November 23rd at 1 p.m. Eastern with me live. Now let's get back to today's episode. Yes. My favorite thing about leadership, my absolute number one favorite thing about being responsible for someone else when it comes to people management is when I see somebody go from shoulders down to shoulders up. You can
Mm,
physically, literally, Stephanie, physically on camera, you can see somebody's transformation in their body positioning. Like you can tell when somebody is shy and reserved and hiding in plain sight to when all of a sudden they start to like rise up like a phoenix and like their wings start to come out. And they're like, wait a minute, I am beautiful and I can fly and I can do these really incredible things. And to me, like that's what fuels me every single day is seeing
mhm.
people literally, and we talked about this, shed their former self and
Yes.
become the new version that they are meant to become with your stewardship, guidance, mentorship. Like that is the greatest joy that I find in personal leadership for me.
I love it. I love that so, so much.
Mm.
I love that. And that's one of the things too. I know I mentioned personality test earlier. As an agency, we have a
Mm-hmm.
high priority on knowing all these different tests about our employees. Now, we don't bombard them all with them all at once, but the DISC,
Mm-hmm.
Myers Briggs, Enneagram, I know their love language, their t shirt size, like
Mm-hmm.
their Colby A, their color, like all the things, and this is, taking time, but we literally keep a spreadsheet with all of that in there very intentionally because,
Mm-hmm.
for one, it's for me, and our agency for inner workings and communicating with each other. How is this person most likely going to take correction? How is this person
Sure.
going to love to be praised? How does all of that work? And so it helps me to be smarter and wiser about who should be in what seat. But then also, the best part that I've loved so much about this is people understanding themselves. And so even recently, with an agency, you're ever evolving, you're ever changing. It's never stationary. I mean, what we do is stationary. We serve clients and we have deliverables, and this is what we do. But what that looks like and how it comes out is always different. And just recently, we had meetings, and I had this revelation too because I'm always trying to learn. And I was at Russell's Inner Circle training for a linchpin, and they had a personality day. And in that personality day, they were just talking about introversion and extroversion. And I'm like, okay, I know all this, blah blah blah. Kind of a little like, oh, let's move on to the next part. But something they said, they were talking about meetings and about how an introvert experiences a meeting versus how an extrovert experiences a meeting. And I guess for whatever reason, our meetings, it had just never dawned on me because I love our meetings so much. And I know our team had been mentioning, well, we have a lot of meetings. And I'm like, oh, yeah, well, it's because of this, and this, and this. But then I realized in that moment while we were at that training that our 15-minute meeting that usually ends up being 30 minutes to 45 minutes in the morning, our rally, I enjoy it thoroughly. We do wins and caught being awesome. So we call each other out and we celebrate wins. Then we do critical issues and we talk about, what are the things that need our attention right away that we can't move forward with that get brought up in that meeting. And then we close in prayer and with prayer requests. And so this, was supposed to be a 15-minute meeting. It would go to like 30 minutes sometimes 45 minutes, but it's because we're talking to each other about different things or this or that or whatever's happening. But what I don't know why, it just dawned on me just recently. It was like, oh my gosh, my poor introverts are probably really suffering through those meetings. I'm enjoying them. Our extroverts are talking it up. We're having a great time. And I was like, but they're so quiet. Like I used to think, man, gosh, she's so quiet. Why is she so quiet? And this one's so quiet too. And I'm like, oh, they could really be struggling. This meeting could be zapping their energy. And that's how they have to start their day. Like they could just be completely zapped by the end of that call. And so recognizing that, I was like, okay, how can we do this differently? How can we compress this, but still have maybe a longer one once a week? What can we do here? And oh my gosh, the introverts rejoice, right? Like, woo, like, oh my gosh, we had a 15-minute rally. Like it really made such a huge difference. And I didn't even realize how much of an impact it had been making on them. So anyway, the personality tests and understanding your employees and remembering that we're not all the same. And that is a beautiful thing because that's what has enabled me to grow my agency to what it is to this day is I hired people who weren't like me. And I need those people who can do those things and they bring value and joy and something I can't bring to my team. And so it's the same thing with these personality tests, helping them to see what is it inside of them that's at work whenever they feel this way or that way, and bringing in experts on each one of the personality tests. We've had an Enneagram expert, a Colby expert, a strengths expert, and we bring them in to train on the personal development side of things. Because I believe if your employees know themselves and they're healthier, you know, that's what I want to do. That's the part of the legacy I want to leave, but also that's going to impact Social Sparrow. That's going to make us work better and function better if we can be healthy together.
Okay. So many good things. So, just I want to make sure for anybody who's listening, do you use the personality assessments pre-hire or post pre-hire? Yeah, or post hire as a means to manage better, which or both?
Yeah, we actually do both.
Okay.
Not so the deep end of all the personality stuff happens after they've been hired.
Right.
We do
Right.
ask them if they happen to know their DISC or their Enneagram or their Myers
Sure.
Briggs. Usually, people know one of them, and it factors in a little bit to our hiring process. Not like, oh, you're a 7, no way I'm hiring you, or you're an 8 or
Mhm.
whatever. Like we definitely don't do that because nobody can be put in a box by personality test, and who knows if they took it wrong. I mean, you never know, or if they took
Mhm.
it 5 years ago, So we don't lean into that too much. It just is like one clue in a pool of many clues of who this person is. And then after they get in, that's when we start kind of filling in the holes. Again, we don't throw them all at them
Sure.
at once, but we do work really
Mhm.
hard to get all of them filled in. So we have everybody on the spreadsheet filled out.
Mm. Okay, that's how so I approach it the same way. I don't love doing the personality assessments before the hire because I feel like it biases my judgment. And to
Mm,
your point, who knows the last time they took the assessment, if they took it honestly or they took it because they knew somebody was grading it or looking at it after the fact, and were they in a balanced state of mind or an unbalanced state of being when they took the test too, because an unbalanced enneagram number is very different than a balanced one, right?
yeah.
But I do like to do the personality assessments and the love languages and things like that. One, because I think it gives common language to the team that we can all reference, like, oh, she's
Oh
being such a
yes.
7 right now, or she's being
Yeah.
such an 8 right now. And it kind of gives permission to be your natural self.
Yeah.
But also, too, for me, I think it's just really nice because it helps me meet people where they need to be met if I know certain attributes about them. If they like public praise versus private praise, like you said, corrective, how I would approach a corrective conversation versus, one of the tougher conversations, crucial conversations. So I like it as a means to better manage more than it is to influence my hiring.
I love that. I love that.
Okay, so here's my thing. This is kind of where I think we've been building to this moment because we had this conversation before I even pushed the record button, just between the two of us, how the two of us as women right now, as friends, women, CEOs, are feeling the shedding of a former self.
Mm,
And like
mhm.
I know you're walking into another level and it's like, oh, it's some refinement. And I am too. I can feel it. And I know you can feel it. We've had these moments together sitting at a conference crying.
Yes.
But when you have been with employees for years, like you have, like when you've had team members for years, I'm about to ask you a question that I like genuinely am probably going to actually reflect on how I would even answer it, because I don't think I've ever even been asked this question or thought about it for myself. So no pressure. But like when you've been working with team members for years, right? They are also going through the shedding of a former self. And that can be going from single to not single. That can be going from not being a parent to being a parent. That can go from parent to now parenting older parents. I mean, gosh, like there's so many versions of a life, and that's just like more the biological life. But then there's other things that happen, or interruptions or disruptions in a life. But my team, I can definitely say that I've been with team members for such a long time that I can genuinely say now in hindsight, like I could see that they were shedding a former self and embracing a
Mm,
new self.
mm.
How do we as leaders embrace it, support it, not let it scare the crap of us? Like, because you know what? It's comfortable when you know somebody is a thing. And then when they change who they are and they develop into a new thing, it's like, uh-oh, like I have to recalibrate. Maybe this role isn't right for you. Maybe you want
Mm.
something else because that fits this new version of you. How do you find space for your team's shedding into a newer being?
That's a phenomenal question. And the first thing that comes to mind is one time there was this church that we were going to, and I can't remember why, but for a little while we were there and then we weren't there. Like we just didn't go for a long while. And whenever I came back, there was like a whole new staff. And it was the
Mm,
craziest feeling, like a whole new staff, but there was one person that was still there, and that was the pastor. And I just looked at him and I was like, whoa, because I was in these meetings, they were so close, like doing life together, making all these incredible things happening. And then there he was alone, not alone, but he was the lone man standing, and everybody else was
Sure.
gone for various reasons. And I just looked at him and I said, can I ask you a question? And I was like, how do you do that? Like, how can you? I
Mm.
can't imagine what that must feel like to constantly have
Mhm.
people come and then they go and then they come and they go for various reasons, some good, some bad, right? And he just looked at me and he had these gargantuan hands and he was like, I have to hold them just like this. And for those of you who
Mm.
are only listening, I have my hand wide open,
Mhm.
right? It's like, this is how I hold on to people because they're
Mm.
not mine. And I, at that moment, took that in and I just kind of had this revelation about myself and in any leadership position, because I have been under some of the worst leadership ever. And I was like, I will never, ever be that way. I will never treat people that way. Never again, never will I ever do that. And so whenever I started my agency, I remember my first employee that ever left. I already mentioned her once. She was just the most, I still to this day adore her. We're still in contact. And it was good for her to make this move. I couldn't match what she needed. And, they stole her back from me, and not disgruntled about it at all. But anyway, but whenever she left, I am not joking, you guys. There was a series of events, but she let me know that she was going to be quitting, hit me out of the blue, had no idea. I was
Mm.
totally caught off guard. And I had my campaign technician, and she was the first person I'd ever hired to be client facing, right?
Mm.
And so when she left, it was a series of two or three things, one of which was Endgame was released. Okay, Endgame. Y'all remember that movie? And freaking Spider-Man goes up into, like, I'm showing my nerd card here, but Spider-Man dissipates into dust and goes into the wind. Like, it was horrendous, and I love Marvel, and I was rent after that show. But what had happened was she had just turned in her notice, and then we go to see the movie. My husband's like, it's going to be okay, babe. Just come see Endgame. You're going to love it. It's Marvel. You love Marvel. It'll lift your spirits. It was horrible. I walked out of that movie and I was like bawling my face off.
Crying.
And no joke, and I know that sounds so silly, but my emotions were so all over the place and I was so rent. Like that word rent. I just felt like rent. Like I'd poured so much into her and she was so good, and my clients loved her. She made us laugh. She's just so incredible. And she was going to be gone. And I had to start
Mm.
over. I had to figure
Mm.
this out again. And I am not kidding you. I was in fetal position in the bathroom floor, just bawling my face off after Endgame, like, what am I gonna do? And like, whenever I was so pitiful, ridiculous. But what had happened is I was holding on to her like this.
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
my
Tight.
fence tight around who she was because
Yeah.
I enjoyed her and loved her so much. And and
Mm.
I have so many employees that do that now, even now. But what
Mm.
I learned is that she's a human being. She is not just a social sparrow employee. She is a
Mm.
human being. And
Mm.
God has a path for her, right?
Mm.
She's not, it's not my path for her to be with Social Sparrow forever plus a day. It is for me to hold all of these employees with an open hand because um, they're on a path. And that path may mean being with Social Sparrow for 15 years, or it might mean not coming in for a year or
Mm.
two and then getting growth and accelerating and doing something else. But I have to trust God. I have to trust the journey. I have to trust myself that no matter what happens, if she leaves, she left, what happened? I figured it out. I figured
Mm.
it out. And let me tell you what, the next person I hired, she was incredible too. She was just absolutely incredible too. And so it's learning. Sometimes I feel like I had to like experience that and like recognize that and then learn that for one, I can trust myself, I can trust God, I can trust the journey. And there are incredible people out there that want to work with you,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so yeah, I think holding people with an open hand and recognizing that you have to be a good steward of people in your life. And sometimes that means letting them go.
When you started, by the way, phenomenal story. I don't know how we went from pastor to Spider-Man, dissolving into dust and Endgame and fetal position. I loved it. It was a great, phenomenal story. It had all the right tenets where I'm like, yes, all the emotions. But that's probably this has been my favorite part of the whole podcast is right here, right now,
Love it.
because I loving them, caring for them, not with a closed fist like you own them,
Hmm.
but with an open palm because they could fly, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just at any moment they take flight. And I'm like, oh gosh. And then your company name is Sparrow and it just all comes together.
Oh my gosh, you wanna hear the craziest thing, Veronica? So we've always had a, company culture statement that is about what we do, right?
Hmm.
But my
Hmm.
clients started calling my employees sparrows. I've never called my
Yeah.
employees sparrows before,
Yeah.
but they started calling them sparrows. And
Yeah.
so at one point we were working on revamping our rally and doing some work. And
Hmm.
I was looking over our culture statement, and then I was like, sparrows, what does it mean to be a sparrow? And so I just spent some
Yep.
time.
Yep. What does it mean?
Yeah, I started
Hmm.
thinking about who they are. Who are these women on my
Hmm.
team? And listen, I'm not against hiring any men at all. I would hire a stay-at-home dad. Like no biggie. But it just so happens the people who have applied, the people who were the best fit were women. And so,
Hmm.
and now we have actually two guys on the team that are supporting roles. But not it's not like I'm over here women only. Not that that would necessarily be a bad thing, but I'm just saying I was like, who are these women? Who are these incredible sparrows? And from that, we actually got, or I created a statement, a team statement, basically of who we are and how we function, and that has to do with the bravery of these women and how courageous they are, and how they're not willing to sacrifice being able to support their family while still being at home with their kids, and that I think was one of the biggest revelations for me too, is just like building not only just a culture for my team to live within, but an identity for them to take on as well, and being
Yeah.
as a part of this team and being a sparrow.
God, I love that so much. That just like literally, Stephanie, I've had goosebumps multiple times in this podcast because I know how it feels when I'm like, you're a rainmaker, what that feeling is like.
Yes.
And then I was talking to Emily Reagan very recently, and she trains, marketing doers and assistants, and then they're unicorns and like this identifier. And then you feel like and then to you as a CEO, what that means, not just calling yourself a sparrow, but like owning it. Like, what does that
Yeah.
actually mean? And how does that embody the culture of
Yes.
this company and what we do here, way beyond just the task that you might see in a project management tool. I just love that so much. That's my favorite part of this whole podcast, honestly. Okay. I could talk to you forever and you know that we can. And I know that you have an agency specifically for chiropractors. However, I'm not a chiropractor and I adore you and gain so much value from you because you're just a thought leader, an entrepreneur, a friend, a colleague. Like you're so one of the most generous people I've ever met. Like you're so giving. How can people, regardless if they're a prospective client or not, but just to gain and learn from you, how can they connect with you further from this podcast?
Yeah. For one, just please find me on Instagram and Facebook. I am actually launching something that's not brand new, but it's something it's been in my heart for a while, called Powerful Parenting. And so my
Mhm.
intention is for it to be for entrepreneurs specifically. So if you're an entrepreneur and your heart is to be a powerful parent in your life, definitely come over and follow me and look for that content, because that's coming out really soon. Actually, I'm going to be starting my own podcast. And so I'm super excited
Yes.
about that. But yeah, please find me on Facebook, Instagram. I try
Okay.
to make sure that I get to everybody and say hi. And I'd love to be your friend and get to know who you are, especially if anything I've said today resonates with you. I love to find people who,
Mhm.
like Veronica, like I just absolutely adore Veronica. I love her heart. And like the moment I met her, I was like, yes, whatever's in her, we're cut from some of the same cloth.
Mhm.
So I love to find people whenever I'm talking, and whatever I'm saying resonates with them too, because it's just powerful to find other women who are about the same thing. It's just really, really
Mhm.
powerful. And so
Mm.
if that's you, come find me. I'd love to be your friend on Facebook or Instagram for sure.
Yeah, and literally, she is everyone's friend. So that's like a sincere offer. Like, if you need a friend, call Stephanie. Like, that's literally the best way to put it. If you need a sparrow friend, call Stephanie.
Yes, please do. Please do.
Oh, Stephanie, thank you so much for being on the Rainmaker podcast. Thank you for, I know sometimes me pushing you to talk about how awesome you are isn't always the most comfortable thing, but I genuinely think that you're one of the most premier CEOs that I've ever had an opportunity to get to know. And the team that you've built and the people that work for you and how they show up for you, how they love you, how they speak of you, how I speak of you, how your friends, our mutual contacts, you are a phenomenal human being. And I know that your passion is helping parents and the next generation. We've had many conversations about this. So I'm very excited to see what you do in that arena as well.
Yeah.
So thank you, thank you,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Veronica. Love you, girl.
Thanks for listening to the Rainmaker podcast. We believe you can't get real results or have real relationships that last without being real first. If you resonated with today's episode, leave us a review so we can keep serving up the truth and tips that help you become the empowered leader that I know that you are. And always head over to veronicarami.com to check out all the free resources I have for you and the show notes from this episode. Until next time, my friends.